Still think Ireland is weak? Then you haven't been paying attention. Because while the world loves to joke about Ireland's neutrality, or treat it like a peaceful island tucked away in the corner of Europe, the reality is shifting faster than almost anyone outside the country realizes. According to Ireland's own Ministry of Defense, the government has approved the largest increase in defense funding in the history of the state, built around a long-term plan called Level of Ambition 2. That means record budgets, new armored vehicles, new aircraft, new naval ships, new radar and air defense projects, new intelligence structures, and even serious planning work around jet fighters. This is not the Ireland people think they know. This is the real story of how Ireland, quiet, neutral, and overlooked, is transforming into one of Europe's most surprising defense rebuilds. For decades, Ireland lived under a simple assumption. Europe was stable, the Atlantic provided natural protection, and neutrality meant safety. Ireland was comfortable in this belief, supported by geography and the idea that major wars were a thing of the past. But that assumption shattered in 2022. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, European governments scrambled to reassess their vulnerabilities. Ireland was no exception. According to statements from the Irish government at the time, the invasion forced Dublin to admit that relying purely on diplomacy, distance, and ad hoc arrangements with allies was no longer enough. Ireland had already been grappling with gaps in its defense posture, but the invasion made the issue impossible to ignore. In February 2022, the government published the Commission on the Defense Forces report, a sweeping and comprehensive assessment of Ireland's security. It was brutally honest. The report described Ireland's military as underfunded, undermanned, and technologically behind the curve, with dangerous vulnerabilities in air defense, naval surveillance, cyber protection, and intelligence coordination. The Commission proposed 3 paths forward: LOA 1, LOA 2, and LOA 3. LOA 1 was basically doing the bare minimum. LOA 3 would have tripled spending towards about 3 billion euros a year to match other small European states. LOA 2 sat in the middle. It called for roughly a 50% increase in defense spending plus deep reforms and new capabilities. In July 2022, the Irish government chose LOA 2. The Taoiseach and the Minister for Defense publicly committed to that roadmap, and official documents make it clear that LOA 2 is meant to transform the defense forces by 2028. And the money started flowing almost immediately. Ireland's 2025 defense budget, published by the Department of Defense, sets a record allocation of 1.35 billion euros, the highest in the country's history. That is a 100 million euro increase over 2024, a year-on-year jump of about 8%, and around a 22% increase compared to 2022. But the annual number is only half of the story. The LOA 2 plan, as costed in the Commission report, estimates around 2.465 billion euros in capital investment over 10 years. This money is set aside for equipment and infrastructure rather than salaries. It covers new vehicles, new ships, new radar, subsea awareness systems, upgraded barracks and bases, and hardened communications. Ireland historically spent very little on defense, roughly 0.2 to 0.3% of GDP in recent years, which is far below the NATO guideline of 2%. That is why analysts and even some Irish politicians used words like hollow or skeletal to describe the force. Now, the government's own target is to bring the budget up to about 1.5 billion euros a year in 2022 prices by 2028. That would be the largest sustained increase ever agreed for the defense forces. But a budget is just a number, unless it translates into real capability. In Ireland's case, that money is being wired directly into every branch of the military. Let's start with the army, the backbone of Ireland's defense. According to Defense Forces briefings and parliamentary answers, one of the first priorities is simply people. The permanent defense forces had slipped to around 7,500 to 7,800 personnel on a paper establishment of 9,500, and some sources openly called it a retention crisis. The LOA 2 goal is clear. Ireland aims to build up to 11,500 personnel by 2028, including a civilian component, on top of the original 9,500 establishment baseline. Budget 2025 includes funding to recruit roughly 400 extra personnel as part of that ramp-up. That is why you see higher pay scales, new recruitment campaigns, and better training infrastructure being rolled out. It is not cosmetic, it is about stopping the bleed and rebuilding the force. Next comes equipment. Ireland's armored fleet includes vehicles like the Moag Piranha 3H, which have served well but are getting old. Many of the Army's armored personnel carriers date back 2 decades or more. The LOA-2 plan explicitly calls for replacing older APCs with heavier, modern armored vehicles by around 2030. These bring better protection, mobility, and digital command systems. For a traditionally light force, that is a major shift. On the firepower side, Ireland is not starting from scratch, but it is scaling up. Irish troops have operated the FGM-148 Javelin anti-tank missile since the mid-2000s, including on UN deployments in Lebanon. In 2025, the United States approved a new foreign military sale worth about $46 million to significantly expand Ireland's Javelin stocks, adding new launch units and missiles. So, when you talk about an Irish infantry section in 2030, you are no longer talking about a lightly equipped peacekeeping patrol. You are talking about soldiers with modern body armor, digital radios, night vision, armored mobility, and high-end anti-tank missiles. LOA-2 also demands upgraded communications, battlefield awareness tools, and surveillance systems across the Army. That means secure radios, tactical data links, and better integration between ground units, drones, and air support. Then comes the biggest strategic shift that touches both land and air: Ireland's first integrated national radar and air defense project. Ireland's airspace has long been one of the least monitored in Western Europe. For decades, air policing of unidentified aircraft was effectively handled by the United Kingdom's Royal Air Force under informal arrangements, something both sides have acknowledged. It worked, but it meant Ireland did not fully control its own skies. That system is now being overhauled. Following a key recommendation from the Commission on the Defence Forces, Ireland is investing hundreds of millions of euro in a primary military radar system that can detect aircraft even when their transponders are off, including stealthier or hostile platforms. Government statements and recent reporting show that this radar network will be spread across multiple sites and is planned to be rolled out in phases between 2026 and 2028. It is designed to integrate with ground-based air defense systems and maritime radar, creating a unified air and sea surveillance picture. Alongside radar, Ireland is moving to field its first dedicated ground-based air defense system, with missiles and mobile radar units capable of countering drones and other aerial threats, either by shooting them down or jamming them. That broader air defense technology initiative has been publicly described by the Minister for Defense as a priority, especially given the spike in global drone use and hybrid threats. Air mobility is also being upgraded. According to Airbus and multiple defense outlets, in October 2025, the Irish Air Corps received its third and final Airbus C-295, completing a €300 million fleet expansion that includes maritime patrol and transport variants. It is the largest single equipment project in Defense Forces history. These aircraft are now central to troop movements, maritime patrols, disaster response, and UN missions. This is not the only aviation investment. The government has also signed for new H-145M helicopters for delivery in 2027, replacing older EC-135s and boosting surveillance, training, and light utility roles, as well as a Falcon 6X multi-role government and strategic transport jet. Then there is the elephant in the room: fighter jets. For most of its modern history, Ireland has had no fast jets of its own. But in 2025, multiple reports confirmed that the government is actively examining options for buying modern combat aircraft and building the necessary radar, basing, and training infrastructure. It is still in the assessment phase, not a signed program, but the fact that Dublin is even seriously looking at a fighter fleet shows how far its air defense thinking has moved. Whether or not Ireland ends up with fighters, by 2028 it will, for the first time, have national radar coverage, ground-based air defenses, and a robust airlift and patrol fleet. That is a completely different air posture from the one it had just a few years ago. If there is one branch that shows how strategically important Ireland actually is, it is the Navy. Ireland's marine territory is huge. According to the Marine Institute, the real map of Ireland includes over 220 million acres of seabed, about 880,000 square kilometers. That is more than 10 times the size of Ireland's land area. This zone is packed with fisheries, vital shipping routes, offshore wind projects, and crucially, the undersea cables that carry much of Europe's data traffic to and from North America. Historically, the Naval Service has struggled to patrol all of this. Manpower issues became so serious that several ships were placed in reserve and patrol days were cut roughly in half between 2020 and 2024, leaving only a fraction of the fleet fully operational at times. At the same time, Ireland has been quietly adding new hulls. In 2022, it bought 2 Lake-class inshore patrol vessels from New Zealand, now commissioned as L.E. Aueben and L.E. Gobnate, to perform fisheries and inshore security roles in the Irish Sea. By late 2025, the Naval Service fields 8 main vessels, 4 P-60 offshore patrol vessels, 2 larger P-50 patrol vessels, and the 2 new inshore patrol vessels. However, the big change is not just ships, it is how Ireland watches its seas. Budget 2025 and subsequent announcements include major funding for subsea awareness and sonar on top of radar. In 2025, the government confirmed a €60 million sonar program to detect submarines, submersibles, and underwater drones in Irish waters. Officials explicitly link this to concerns over Russian activity near energy infrastructure and undersea cables. When you put this together, new inshore patrol craft, upgraded offshore patrols, sonar for the subsea domain, and integrated radar that covers the maritime picture, you can see that Ireland is building something it never truly had before, a layered maritime security system. The goal is not to project power into distant oceans. The goal is to protect one of the most strategically important maritime zones in the European Union. Modern security is not just about visible hardware, it is about information. It is about who knows what, who can see what is happening, and who can respond in time. For years, analysts argued that Ireland lacked an integrated national security structure. The Commission on the Future of Policing and multiple security commentators called for an overarching national security framework that would link policing, intelligence, defense, and cyber. In response, Dublin has begun to reshape its architecture. In 2025, the Taoiseach announced a ministerial council on National Security and a National Security Secretariat inside the Department of the Taoiseach to coordinate threat assessments and strategy across the state. Around the same time, the government moved to establish a new national security authority under the Justice portfolio. This body is tasked with protecting classified information, setting standards for vetting, and aligning Ireland with EU security norms. On the military side, the Irish Military Intelligence Service, or IMIS, has been formalized and expanded. An intelligence school was set up in 2025 to professionalize training in areas such as human intelligence, signals intelligence, and geospatial intelligence, following recommendations from the Commission on the Defense Forces. Cyber is another area where reality hit hard. In May 2021, Ireland's health service executive was hit by a massive ransomware attack that forced the shutdown of IT systems nationwide and disrupted hospital care. It was widely described as the most serious cyber attack ever on an Irish state body. That attack, followed by lawsuits and investigations, became a turning point for how seriously Ireland treats cyber threats. The government's response includes strengthening the National Cybersecurity Center, drafting a national cybersecurity bill to put it on a statutory footing and implement the EU's NIS2 directive, and deepening Ireland's involvement in European cyber and hybrid threat centers. So when you hear about Ireland's defense expansion, it is not just about ships, planes, and armored vehicles. It is also about building a state that can see threats early, protect its networks, and respond to hybrid attacks that target hospitals, cables, or critical infrastructure. To understand why all of this matters, you have to look at the map. Ireland sits on the western edge of Europe, facing the North Atlantic. It is a gateway for ships, for aircraft, and for the data pulsing through undersea fiber optic cables. Ireland's seabed, airspace, and digital infrastructure are not just Irish assets. They are part of how Europe connects with North America. That is why European and transatlantic security experts have increasingly flagged Ireland as a critical node in Europe's security architecture. Reports from think tanks such as Carnegie, along with EU and NATO-aligned analyses, highlight Ireland's role as a global connectivity hub and a vulnerable point for potential underwater sabotage or cyber operations. At the same time, the threat picture has darkened. Russian spy ships loitering near cables, sonar buoys washing up in Irish waters, and broader concerns about hybrid operations have all been publicly reported. Garda intelligence has raised the domestic threat level from far-right extremism, and Irish authorities are increasingly blunt that neutrality does not immunize the state from modern threats. So when Ireland invests in radar, sonar, patrol ships, cyber defense, and intelligence, it is not trying to become a traditional great power. It is doing something more realistic and arguably more important. It is making sure that this crucial corner of Europe is not the soft underbelly of the entire system. Ireland remains militarily non-aligned, and that is a deeply held part of its political identity. However, neutrality now sits alongside a very different assumption, that the state must be able to secure its own territory, waters, airspace, and data, and must credibly contribute to European security. So, what does all of this add up to if the current plans stay on track? By around 2030, Ireland is aiming for a defense forces establishment of 11,500 personnel, up from a struggling 7,500 or so just a few years ago. The Army will have replaced older APCs with heavier modern vehicles, expanded its stocks of Javelin missiles, and embedded new communications and surveillance systems. The Air Corps will be flying 3 C-295s, new helicopters, and a Falcon 6X, and it will be operating under a national radar and air defense network that finally lets Ireland see and manage what is in its skies. The Naval Service will be working with a fleet of offshore and inshore patrol vessels backed by subsea sonar and a wider radar and surveillance picture, instead of trying to monitor an area 10 times its landmass with a handful of overstretched ships. Cybersecurity and intelligence will sit inside a clearer national security framework. There will be a ministerial council on national security, a national security secretariat, a national security authority to handle classified information, a stronger national cybersecurity center, and a more formalized Irish military intelligence service feeding into that system. Within all of that, Ireland will still be itself. It will continue peacekeeping abroad and remain neutral in alliances, but it will no longer be underarmed at home. This transformation is not something invented for drama. It is laid out in the Commission on the Defense Forces, in government press releases, budget documents, parliamentary replies, and open reporting. Ireland will not be a military superpower. However, it is on track to become a credible, modern, and resilient defender of one of Europe's most important strategic zones. So, still think Ireland is weak? After seeing how fast this country is rebuilding its defenses and how central it is to European security, you might not look at that quiet, rainy island on the edge of the map the same way again.